Most people, when they appoint an executor for their estate, they think, pretty straightforward, pretty easy job. You fill out a few forms for the government, you go to the bank, sign a few forms, you spend a weekend dealing with all the stuff, the personal possessions, everything goes through, all the checks come in, and the estate's settled in a month or two, and it's pretty straightforward. That is so far from the truth. The actual time, the average actual time it takes to settle an estate in North America, so Canada and the United States, is 570 hours. And that is from Estate Exec on their website, a survey they did. 570 hours. That is over 14 weeks. Welcome to the Value Stuff Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Glazier. I'm a certified personal property appraiser, and I value stuff for a living. That's what I want to talk about in this podcast. I want to talk about 570 hours. That number blew me away. And where did I come up with this? That's where I found it on Estate Exec. But what got me going down this rabbit hole, open this Pandora's box of estates and estate planning, was doing research for my podcast a few months ago, and I'm trying to write a book. One of the chapters I was just playing with, how much time does it actually take to deal with all the possessions, all the personal property you're dealing with in an estate? I met with a good friend of mine, and we're talking, and she is a co-owner of a really professional organizing and downsizing company. She deals mostly with estates, and I mostly deal with estates for appraisals. My end of it is usually anywhere from 6 to 12, 15, maybe 20 hours for a bigger estate. That's for me when I go in and inventory all the major items and go back and do the research, compile a nice professional appraisal report. That's my end of it, which is between 8 to 12 hours, 8 to 16 hours. That would be the average estate. But when I asked her, how much time, when people hire you to actually deal with the stuff, how much person hours is that? And she was really hesitant to tell me. And then she said, it's between 100 to 200 hours. That kind of blew me away. That's a lot. It's a lot of time and energy. And I don't think people understand the scope of this. That's where I started doing research. There's very little research on this, which is funny. That's why you need someone like myself to tell you that when you appoint an executor to deal with your estate, you are assigning them 570 total hours of work to administer your estate. Doing the research, dissecting this and going on EstateNet and different websites and more research and talking to people, I said, okay, let's break this down. So how much time is actually involved in this 570? So I wrote it down, and it came out to dealing with the personal possessions, the stuff, is between 150 to 200 hours. The legal part of it and the probate part of it, 100 to 120 hours. Dealing with all the banks and the financial institutions, 80 to 100 hours. Dealing with family and communicating, and it's not always the best communicating, is between 60 to 80 hours. Dealing with the government itself, CRA, the IRS, there's several different levels of government and departments you have to deal with. That is 40 to 60 hours. Dealing with the property itself, the house or the condo or the apartment itself, between 30 to 50 hours, because you're going to have to check on it. You're going to have to make sure it's secure. You're going to have to deal with anything, leaky roof, all that stuff. That's 30 to 50 hours. And dealing with the professionals, that's where I fall under, whether you're dealing with a professional appraiser for the contents and all the personal possessions, but you're also going to probably have to get the property and the house appraised, anything else, cars, et cetera, et cetera. But the total comes to 570 hours. That's what your executor is going to have to deal with. Or maybe you are an executor and you know you're an executor and you need to understand this, that the total amount is 570 hours. I just wanted to get that out there. I'm going to talk about my lane, which is the stuff, which is the biggest percentage of that 570 hours. And in my opinion, and almost in everybody's opinion that has ever dealt with an estate, the hardest part of every estate is dealing with the stuff. It's going to be 150 to 200 hours. People are emotionally attached to the stuff. Someone passes on, that's the chair that dad was sat in all the time. I want mom and I want my dad's wedding rings. That painting, that family portrait, I want it. It's going to take this many hours. It's the emotional hours of dealing with this stuff. I want to get out there. Not only is it 570 hours, not only is it 150 to 200 hours of that is the stuff, it's hard hours, it's difficult hours. It's important that we make it easier. From my standpoint as an appraiser and dealing with this stuff, to make it easier, I've already been talking about this in previous podcasts. The VHS system, most valuable family heirlooms and sentimental items. My last 4 podcasts talked about all that. Even my last podcast kind of generalizes it. If you want to look that up, that'll help. If you are at the point where you're doing your will and you're doing estate planning, read the book, The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning by Margareta Magnusson. I did a TEDx recently. Google it, Daniel Glazier, TEDx. It's called Preventing Your Family Chaos After You Die. We really have to do a better job at understanding how much work it's going to be for our executor, the total amount of hours that are going to be required. B, we got to make it easier. Start your downsizing process. Start, minimizing the stuff you have. Start making a plan for your stuff before you pass on. You're trying to save your family from having to make all these crazy emotional decisions when they're grieving, and you're trying to make it easier for your executor. So it's pretty straightforward. This podcast was really about getting that 570 hours out there to just get people to start thinking about this and understanding that's what is required. The other thing is to understand of that 570 hours, 150 to 200 hours is just dealing with your stuff. So if you can deal with most of your stuff before you pass on, that 150 hours becomes a lot less. Maybe it's 50 hours, but you're going to save time, energy, and money for your estate, for your executor, for your beneficiaries if you deal it before. I hope this helps. Dan Glazier. This was about 570 hours of dealing with an estate. Thank you so much. Like, share, subscribe, the Value Stuff Podcast. Have a great day.